Good evening, comic book fans. This is Source Material Live. I'm your substitute host, rather, Mr. Mark Radulich. As Jesse is still out there giving out ways and means to the good people of Ohio, he'll be back soon, but not soon enough. In the meantime, in between time, I've got the animation expert on all things teen and in between, resident girl from Honeysuckle Rose Creations, Alexis Hejna. How do you do, madam?
Ready, a substitute coach.
That's me, substitute. Tonight we're beginning our look at Supergirl this week. Tonight we're doing a source material live on the book Supergirl Being Super, which was written by our Eisner Award winner Mariko Tamaki and illustrated by Joël Jones, or Jean Jones, or Joël Jones, as normal people would say it. And this is out of continuity. This was just an isolated story. It was a 4-issue limited series that kind of deals with Supergirl, in a Smallville kind of way. It looks at her at a window in her teenage life before she officially takes on the mantle of Supergirl and what all that involves. It's an interesting book. We're going to dig into it momentarily. Later this week, we'll also look at the Supergirl CBS/CW series. And in theory, always in theory, Sean and I will look at the 1984, kind of in continuity, but has since been dropped from continuity, Supergirl movie that took place around the time of the Christopher Reeve movies. With that being said, I pitched this to you to do a ways back because I'd seen it in the bookstore, and I'm trying to focus more with my comic book reading on writers who have won awards that have been touted as being really, really good, not necessarily focusing on like ongoing comic titles. So a lot of like the New 52 Supergirl, or the Rebirth Supergirl, I've kind of left alone, and instead I've looked for encapsulated stories, and I found this one, and this one looked like it got pretty good ratings. Had you heard of it before I pitched it?
I had not actually. Admittedly, I wasn't a huge Supergirl fan before I started watching the show, just not too long ago. I was a fan of her through the Timiverse. I like what they did with the character in that. So it is always interesting to see a new take on Supergirl, because the way I've always read about her, she knew who she was when she came to Earth, and Clark, Superman, whatever you want to call him, helped her get established, and she knew more about Krypton than him. So this is an interesting take, the idea that she knows she's got powers, but she doesn't know why, and she doesn't know her connection to Superman yet. So it's kind of a fun way to look at it.
Yeah, it differs from the premise of the show, which was she was sent after Clark from Krypton as it was exploded to look after him, and then her pod goes off course, and she ends up landing long after he's been Superman and become an adult. So what started as the older cousin now becomes the younger, like, kid sister type. In this volume, she'll, not to get ahead of ourselves, but this is again very much in the Smallville vein, or the Earth One origin type of thing, where basically Supergirl landed as a little girl, and she was raised kind of like Superman was by locals in a Midwestern farm town, and she's just been a girl in the world. As you said, she knows she has power. She's able to do certain things, but she's just trying to live a normal life. Her parents have told her, hey, keep a lid on this. This is not something people need to know about. People will freak out, that sort of thing. So she doesn't tend to lay into her powers at all. The first issue of this really just kind of sets the stage, the setting for the story. There's not a whole lot going on. She's a girl. She's got 2 friends. One's a jock, the other one's kind of a misfit. She runs track, and it's her, I think it's like her 16th birthday or so, she's been told. She's not quite sure how old she is, having, crashed on the planet and all.
The idea of her running track, was I the only one who got Incredibles flashbacks to that scene at the end of the first movie when they're yelling at Dash? It's like, close, make it second, don't go too fast.
I didn't think of it, but now that you mentioned it, that's funny.
And we also learned that when Supergirl gets a zit,
that was gross.
That was so disgusting.
I honestly skipped that page. I glanced at it, I'm like, boop, and then like, nope, moving on.
Yeah, I looked at that and all I could think was that scene from Animal House. And was it? Get it?
Boop. Can't do it.
Yeah, thank you, writers. We do not need to know what Kryptonian zits do.
You know what's hilarious about that, though? I kept thinking about I'm Not Okay With This and how me and you are doing the teen girl thing. And this is becoming like an ongoing theme in teen girl books.
For the record, I'm in my 30s. Mark is older than dirt.
I am 44 years young.
Hey, you never admit on Usual Podcasts how old you are, so I just have to...
I say it all the time. What are you talking about? I don't care if people know how old I am. I lean into it. I'm the old man of the mountains, and I don't want them painted.
Lake? That lake? That's my lake. Oh, God.
I can't sit down and watch that this weekend. I gotta watch the new Looney Tunes. Anyway, back to Supergirl. So,
yes,
well, let's break this down. It's only 4 issues. This is not a complex plot here, but you and I keep jumping headfirst into the teen girl thing. Now, you were once a teen girl. Did this speak to you at all? This first issue?
Well, I did, for the record, I didn't run track. If you can't tell from my obsession with comics and superheroes and cartoons, I really wasn't that athletic. I did intramural swim team, and I did taekwondo and hapkido out of school. But that's it. So that part I didn't really get. And when I had zits, I didn't just get one big zit. I did not have good skin growing up. I had a lot of zits.
There's a moodiness to her character. This is somewhat akin to, again, we talked about this. There's a lot of links here to I'm Not Okay With This. Her powers seem to be changing, evolving, and I think it's somewhat tied to puberty. I think thematically, but they don't really dig into it too much because, and this is the other thing I wanted to talk about in this first chapter. Everything that they're dealing with in this first issue, the setup issue, gets cut off because of the earthquake. But so let's put the earthquake aside for a second. What we have here is a girl doing girl things, and whether they directly relate to you or indirectly, my question was, did the moody teenage girl with the friends and the life and the body is changing, did you like, yeah, this seems familiar to me, or this is maybe the writer was trying to get at it but didn't quite hit the mark for you? Where did you land?
I think they actually did get pretty accurate, but I didn't think that her power changing was from moodiness. I thought it was from that stupid bracelet that the undercover coach gave her.
Yeah, that wasn't clear to me. I wasn't sure if it was a natural progression having to do with age, or it was, as we'll find out at the very end of the book, LexCorp sort of motivating her body to change and her powers to evolve. That's the problem with this book. I think it's like 90% good, and I think the idea of what happens when you're a girl in the world and you have powers, again, very similar to I'm Not Okay With This, and I like that part of the story, but if they don't deal with anything having to do with like a typical superhero story, or having to do with like a direct result of her powers until like the very end of the book.
Yeah, don't really establish exactly what the bracelets were doing. We haven't in this first chapter. The Coach Stone gives bracelets to her and two of her friends, which admittedly, that is weird. We see that they have a decent sized track team. It's not just those three, but it looks like, but they actually admit that Stone only gave bracelets to those three. And maybe she just thought that one of the three of them was, well, no, that doesn't make any sense because we find out that she's known for a while that Kara had the powers. So, I don't know.
Well, let's get back to the... Go ahead.
They put a lot of parts of the character right, but the actual plot development to move things forth into getting us our actual real antagonist into this is kind of rushed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think and that's why I was asking you what I asked you. I think the premise, in as far as let's tell Supergirl's origin story from the point of view of she's a girl in the world, you know, struggling with life as a teenage girl, which has its own, you know, ups and downs and pitfalls and promises and whatnot. Let's tell that story with the added element that she's also a Kryptonian. And look, I've never been a teenage girl. I've never even played one on television. But I was thinking back to the girls I grew up with, and I wouldn't profess to know what they were thinking or feeling. But I feel like I had two thoughts about this. One, are any girls ever happy in high school?
No.
Are they all miserable? And do they grow up to become halfway miserable adults? All, you know, or, you know, is it that's just what makes for fun stories, and that they do exist in high school, but no one ever writes a story about them? Because I swear to God, every time we do one of these, the girl is always moody. The girl is always like struggling with something, self-image, identity, what have you. And here you have Supergirl, who in every other iteration of her has actually always been like kind of a hothead. You know, I think back to like the Superman animated show, that iteration of Supergirl, who like he was trying to keep her from flying off the handle half the time. You know, the Supergirl that I've read in the comics, you know, goes on to become a legion, you know, part of the Legion of Superheroes, and there was always a confidence there. So this I thought was a fun interpretation of a teenage character, but my one gripe is that's always the interpretation of a teenage character. It's always the interpretation of a girl, is they're always miserable.
Well, for the most part, teenage girls are miserable. I mean, we do see that she's not like totally miserable. She's moody, but she does have her two best friends. She talks about how her parents are still pretty good.
Yeah, I was like, what's she so mad about?
Well, things really we start noticing things are a little bit off. Again, once she gets the bracelet,
yeah,
and she's noticing that her powers are fluctuating a little bit.
Yeah, she's glowing, and I think it starts off as like it's just glowing, and I don't think it's becoming disruptive in this first issue. The second issue, where they're dealing directly with the earthquake, is where things start to progress.
She doesn't actually seem to get like moody until halfway through, when she stays up all night cleaning up the part.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say this as somebody who pulled multiple all-nighters in high school. That is completely accurate.
Fair enough. Anything else about this first issue before we move on?
I do love a lot of this artwork. I love it's used repeatedly throughout all the issues, but I love the scenes of the two best friends meeting her out front with the sparklers to celebrate her birthday. It's just a little minor touch, but it's so cute. You know, just like, yeah, obviously they can't do a lot of big stuff in a small town like they live in, so they're waiting out front with sparklers, and they're singing to her, and it's so adorable. And I love the little silhouettes full page with just the sparklers lit up. That is gorgeous artwork, and I really like it.
Second issue, at the end of the first issue, while they were at a track meet, an earthquake erupts, and the second issue deals directly with that. The impetus for what happens next in this chapter is that Supergirl attempts to save her jock friend Jen from falling into a chasm that has opened up due to this earthquake, and her powers are fighting her, and she can't get it together enough to save this girl in time, and she falls to her death. Now, okay, from here on in, I get why she's moody. Duh. But leading up to it, I was like, again with this? Like, why are you so sad? But she unfortunately can't get her shit together fast enough with her powers freaking out the way they are to save this girl in enough time. And so the second issue really deals with how Jen's death affects Kara. That's pretty much the whole issue, as near as I can tell. Parents trying to reach their daughter, trying to help her through things. Her and her friend texting each other back and forth. There's a lot of that. She goes for a run at some point, and her powers kind of freak out on her again. There's the funeral. She eventually starts kind of screw her head on, and she starts having. This is where she starts talking. She talked about it in the first issue where she's having dreams. She's actively having nightmares now, and she's turns out they're not nightmares; they're actually suppressed memories of her being sent away from Krypton by her parents. She starts dealing with the pod that she came in, and I think at the very end of it, she starts hearing a voice say, "Help me." And that's when she's alerted to the possibility there might be somebody else from Krypton hanging about. So what did you think of issue number 2?
This is definitely a storyline we've seen before, but it does come back repeatedly for a good reason. The superhero's first real failure, realizing that something is wrong and you can't save everyone, and it's emotional and it really does hurt. Again, some of this artwork is amazing. We got this absolutely beautiful page after the earthquake. Kara is crying and she's wrapped up in, I don't know what these are made of. It's those shiny thermal blankets. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know what they're made of, but you see them all the time. She's wrapped
Look like
up.
they're made of aluminum foil.
They look like it, but they're kind of they're a thermal blanket, and she's wrapped up when she's crying. And in the reflection of that foil texture, you actually see her parents reaching out to her, and whoever drew that, someone give them a freaking award, because that is so gorgeous looking. And I will say that this is a very emotional chapter of the storyline, and it's not going to be for everyone, because a good chunk of it is Kara sitting on the couch, a lot of inner monologue, a lot of crying. And it's understandable. You understand exactly why she's doing this, but I can see a lot of people trying to get through this and either not enjoying it, or it may hit a little bit too close to home.
Yeah, I can see a lot of what happened to the punchy parts.
Yeah, so this is a very, a gut-wrenching part of it. Anyone who has lost a good friend, anyone who's survived a disaster like that, it's gonna really hit home for them. So, again, it's very emotional, but I can understand not everyone liking it.
Sure. I kind of facetiously was like, there's no punchy parts in this, but I think that's going to be, I think for me as a 44-year-old man looking at this, I kind of see it for what it is, and I enjoy it, but I can see like this not doing great on the newsstands. Like I can see this is one where I think comic book store owners and workers might put it out front, like people should read this. And I think like when I'm done with it, I should hand it to my daughter, who's getting to be heading into the tween years. She's 9 now, and I think it's a good one for her. But like I think the average comic book reader might struggle with this. We're 2 issues into this, and the only thing that's happened is there's an earthquake. And she ends up not being able to save her friend, which again, I think there's a cinematic quality to this. I think there's a great story being told here. I'm not sure how the average comic book fan does with this sort of thing. This definitely feels very niche.
I will add, there's one thing that I wish they had done a little bit more of establishment. We see Kara finally have her dream about, and she gets the vision about leaving her family, and she goes to the barn and she pulls out it's her baby blanket, and it's got the Superman S, the House of L crest on it. I don't feel like this book really establishes just how well known Superman is.
No, not at all.
Because,
you wouldn't even know Superman's in the book.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't show up until like the last few pages, and it's just a little annoying because I feel like Superman would have been well known for a while, and when she pulls it out and she sees the S on it, she's like, "What does this mean?" And I'm like, "So, what is Superman doing at this point that symbol has not become the icon that we know it does become in the DC universe?"
Right.
It's just a little confusing trying to figure out just where he is when she pulls down. She's like, "What does this mean?" And everyone's going, "Oh my God, you don't know what that means."
Well, I think about like the first season of when it was on CBS, the Supergirl show, and they just acknowledged it up front. Her pod lands and Superman goes and gets her.
Exactly.
And says, "Hey, I'm your cousin, your baby cousin Kal-El, and you're on Earth now, and you're gonna have crazy powers because this planet's goofy yellow sun. And here's some Midwestern adoptive parents, just like I had. Hopefully, this works out well for you later."
Or like in the Timverse when he finds her in stasis from fleeing Argo City, and he brings her to the Kent family farm, and the first establishing shot of her is enjoying her powers.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's actually, I didn't think about that, but that's actually a really good point. How do you not know? How is this only a thing at the end of the book? So chapter 3, if there's nothing else, there's an interesting bit here in chapter 3. I have the page open to it now. She talks about, she's trying to get her head back on straight. I did not understand my mom's meatloaf shirt, by the way, that the friend wears.
That is either the most hipstery thing in the history of mankind, or there is a private joke that the writer put in there that the rest of us are not going to get.
Yeah, because I started thinking about like Mom Spaghetti in the Eminem song, and I'm like, no, I don't think that's what this is. So anyway, so about partway through chapter 3, she has a flashback to when the grandparents' house goes on fire, their barn, and she uses her powers. And she's a little bit younger here, and she uses her powers to save her grandfather's life. And the dialogue goes, that girl is not natural. You got to call the authorities." And then the father says, "She's part of this family. That's the end of it." And, they deign to never visit this family again. The grandparents do. But occasionally they call the adoptive mother. But outside of that, they're like, freak, dirty, stinking mutie, that sort of thing. So I'll take it that far. What did you... That's there to add layer to this character of, why she doesn't really try to acknowledge her powers, why she's trying to live as normally as possible, because the few times she's shown herself, it has not gone well. What did you think of that?
For the record, I just did a Google search on my mom's meatloaf, and all it comes up with is a million recipes for mom's meatloaf, which is, I guess, is just, this is going to taste just like what your mom used to make. So.
Terrific.
Yeah, so again, don't get it. Second note, Kara's adoptive grandparents are assholes.
Have you tried not being a mutant? It's my favorite line from X-Men 2.
Yeah, I love it. It's like she pulls her adoptive grandfather out of a burning barn, saves his life, and he says, "You got to call the authorities." It's like, well, it's like, you're welcome, you grateful shit.
Yeah. So moving on. She does something with the phone or the bracelet or whatever, and it says LexCorp on it. This is where we actually start to see some action here. She sneaks out in the middle of the night, and she finds the hidden lab. Now, there was the gym coach, that was dealing with the track team, a Miss Stone. Turns out she's a LexCorp employee and a scientist, and we find the guy that was saying, "Help me," in Kara's head, turns out to be another Kryptonian. And she finds him being experimented on, and she goes a little nuts and starts shooting up the place with her laser eyes, laser beams.
I love it when when he starts speaking to her in Kryptonian, and she's like, "Wait, I know this language." That's that's a nice little touch, actually. That subconsciously she still knows the language. She just, she just really can't think of it. And yeah, I'm just gonna ask it. Do we ever get an official count of how many Kryptonians actually escaped Krypton?
Yeah,
Because at this point, I
because it
think
used to be only one, and now it's quite a number.
yeah, when you actually look through all the issues, I think half the fucking planet is still alive.
Well, let's see. You have Argo City, which is in a bottle on Brainiac's ship at one point or another. You have Zod, who was sent into the Phantom Zone before the place exploded. Kal-El, Kara, whoever the hell, depending on which universe and which dimension, and whoever the hell else they want, I suppose. Crypto, the dog. So this is where we find out what his name is. His name is Tanon, and his whole deal, he explains, is that he was some sort of a scientist, anthropologist, that sort of guy. And he's like, yeah, I came to Earth, and there's definitely some... He kills a passerby at one point. He's a little pissed off.
That was a pretty gruesome death. I mean, yeah, he uses his heat vision, and you can see his smoldering ribs and part of his skull in a blood. I was not expecting this book to show that much. Well, it's not like a lot of gore, but this is the goriest this book has gone so far. And when I saw that, I was like, whoa, okay, we just took a step forward.
So
I do love how he crushes the camera under his foot, although the inner photographer in me was like, no, not the camera.
So that's pretty much chapter 3. She saves him. He dumps a bunch of exposition, and then he kills a person. And then our exciting conclusions in chapter 4, where basically he's like, join me. And she's like, well, no, not all the humans are bad. He's like, sure they are. And then they fight.
Seems like the storyline of so many. I've actually been watching a lot of the X-Men animated series as of late, and it's like every season we get one of those. No, all mutants are bad, or no, all humans are bad, and yeah.
She saves her friend. Her friend ends up falling, and she saves her. Most of this issue 4 is her fighting Tanon, and he tries to blow up the town. She stops him using her cold breath. And he just runs off. Like, there's no conclusion to this. He just, like, I'll get you next time, Gadget. Next time. And he fucks off. Yeah, that's kind of it. And now she's kind of exposed. She figures, well, I've got these powers. There are other threats in the world. This dude might come back. I don't know what else to do. So she's going to go look for Clark. She's going to go look for Superman. We have one shot of Lex Luthor, and then the book's over. Oh, and her friend meets a girl and goes on a date. That's it. That's the story. Supergirl being super.
I do kind of like this idea that Tanon doesn't realize that Krypton is gone. And I mean, he obviously left years before Krypton started to show any problems. I'm wondering if he was... plot exposition point number a million about how someone has not aged.
The timeline, it's an interesting idea, but the timeline doesn't add up because he would have had to have been here for a while, and during that while, Superman existed, and so he has to have been here long enough to know that not all humans are Lex Luthor. So his whole character is predicated on the idea of, I got here, I extended my hand of friendship, and the Earthlings acted like Ming from Mongo and, jumped me, and I've been in a lab being experimented on ever since, so now I hate all humans. That can't possibly have been how this went, because you got here and Superman was already a thing. Or Lex Luthor would have never been able to find you. They never explain how they got him.
Yeah, I mean, was this literally just the only person you have been in a lab for like another 10 years or something? Admittedly, they don't do a really good job of establishing how old Tanon is, how long he's been in the lab, or his age as compared to Kara, who is supposed to be around 16.
I swear to God, the script for this had to have been a Mariko Tamaki, like, she handed in a script where there was no action. And DC was like, nope. Have you met our readers? Where's the punchy part? What are you writing, Doom Patrol? Get this the fuck out of here. Rewrite this.
And I'm not going to lie. The scenes where they're first talking in the lab and he's like, what's your name? She goes, Cara Danvers. He goes, what's your real name? And they have the artwork of them getting closer. And she says, and she thinks, I've always known. I'm sitting there going, oh, dear God, we're going Stephanie Meyer on this shit.
Yes, we needed a scene of Cara Danvers sitting in a chair as the camera rotates around her and the seasons change.
Sorry, I've read way too many fan arts and fan fictions from so many people about this kind of stuff. It's like, I don't need that kind of crap out of my actual comics. Thank you.
All right. So on the one hand, I really I like the idea of I'm just a girl in the world and, and teenage angst and misery. I don't need the punchy parts. On the other hand, I kind of wish I knew that going in because I kept waiting for something to happen and it doesn't. So, like, upon second read, I would probably be a lot more patient with it. The first time around, though, I was like, does this ever go anywhere? Does she do anything? Like, where are we going with this story? Like, it does feel like it's not paced great. So, on the one hand, thematically and character-wise, I like Kara. I like the themes of the book. I don't think the plot's paced very well, and it feels like the stuff with Tan on was a second edit, like an add-on later in the story, because what I'm saying was what the DC editors were saying. And then the conclusion is he just sort of, like I said, he just fucks off, and she's like, well, I know I'm a high school dropout now, but I need to know what this is all about. I need to figure some shit out. So I'm going to go look for Superman, and she finds him, like, instantly, like, within a day. And then the book's over. And I'm like, this either needed another issue or two for fleshing out, or this needed a better, stronger ending. I'm going to give you the last word here.
This could have done a lot better if we had a bit more establishment on where this lines up with everything else in the DC universe, where Superman is at his point, so we know where she's going to meet up with him and how and whether or not the whole House of L crest has really become a thing yet or not. So I would have liked to have a little bit more establishment with it. I will say we keep bringing up I'm not okay with this. I mentioned in that review, plug, that it felt like the writer was not really deserving of the that he was writing. That he was talking about really depressed, angsty, very young teenage girls. But looking at his credentials and what he'd written before and going back further into the book, it just kind of felt like, dude, you just seem to think, assume that this is what teenagers really think, but you don't really feel like there's any grounded reality to why you're doing this. Supergirl being super, thankfully does have that. This is written by, I'm assuming Mariko Tamaki is female. It does come across a lot more like I have been a teenage girl and I, know more about what's going on. And I like that. It's much more relatable and it feels more authentic.
So, as I said earlier, Mariko Tamaki was an Eisner Award winner. She also won a Caldecott honor. She is the person responsible for This One Summer. I don't know if you know about that or not. Any idea what This One Summer is?
Sorry, there was some static there. I didn't hear what you said. Sorry.
She wrote This One Summer.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay. So overall, what do you think of the book?
I did enjoy it. It's very emotional, and people who are looking for your basic action, punchy, as you put it, they're not going to find it here. But this is still a very good book, and I really did like it.
Yep. So did I. Another short one, but not all of these have to be the Kree Skrull war. It's like my go-to now. So that's it. I think that's going to be where we're going to call it for the evening. Tomorrow, Alexis and I will get together again, and we'll take a time out to talk about the first 4 seasons of Supergirl, and then we'll dig into season 5. It's a doozy, all right. And then myself and
Season 5, or as I call it, will you all stop being so frickin' dramatic?
No. Myself and Jesse Starcher will review Lamb of God, the new Lamb of God album, and then myself and Sean Comer will do a on trial for Supergirl from 1984. I got to watch that next as well. So I'll be defending, he'll be prosecuting, I believe. And then next week we'll do it all again. The 4 or 5 issue arc, and the 4-issue arc that starts off the Batwoman Rebirth series. Volume 1, The Many Arms of Death. And then we'll look at the first and last and only season with Ruby Rose in it. Ruby Riot. What is the actress name? Ruby Rose?
Ruby Rose.
Thank you. Ruby Rose. Batwoman, Season 1. Which after the woman left, they should have just canceled the whole show. Goddamn. Start again. Try a new character. And then myself and Jesse Starcher will review the new Mushroom Head, and that'll take us into July. If you've been enjoying Alexis Hejna, and really, why wouldn't you? She will be finishing her run of Source Material Lives on July 6th. We'll be looking at the 6-issue arc, the 6-issue limited series, Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. So that'll be fun. And then Chris Sheehan takes over for a couple of weeks. He's going to get off his cosmic treadmill and hang out with me for a couple of shows, so that'll be fun. Always fun. All right. In addition to which, Alexis Hejna and I will be reviewing the new Looney Tunes series, the 30 shorts on HBO Max, and that'll be July 8th. So, and then hopefully you'll get out and start doing some cons, right? That's what you told me. You were like, well, quit booking me for shows. I got cons to do. Cons. When's your next con?
Well, for the record, we're still waiting to hear from a lot of shows. Unfortunately, with the unpredictability of the coronavirus and with people warning about a second wave coming and fears of another quarantine and shutdown, a lot of conventions have kind of been playing it by ear on whether or not they're actually going to stay open. Obviously, all of our spring and early summer shows were either canceled, rescheduled, or they just said, screw it, we'll see you in 2021, assuming that the world doesn't burn down by then. Now, it looks like I'm actually heading to Cape Girardeau in less than 3 weeks for Cape Comic-Con. This is a small show, but we've been doing it for a couple of years. It's a lot of fun. I always like going out there. So, fingers crossed that this one works out okay. I will be going out there with a gallon of hand sanitizer just to be on the safe side. And probably telling most people, let's pay by credit card.
Don't touch me. I'm ugly in the morning. To save some more line.
It is actually interesting how many places have essentially said no more dealing in cash, because I've known this for years. Cash is the filthiest stuff in circulation. I don't think people realize just how disgustingly dirty money is. Every time Scrooge McDuck goes swimming in his money bin, he has just got to be crawling with bacteria and viruses.
Hey, I got breaking news.
Okay.
SpongeBob skipping theaters for on-demand release.
World's still on fire.
Hey, guess what's going to get announced next? Tenet and Mulan move to Ashkesh by the Sea.
Yes, Tenet, I want to see you. Will you stop putting ads in between every single YouTube video? I have seen that trailer more times than I can count.
Okay, they haven't changed the release date just yet. So they just moved it to on demand because I guess they figured nobody's bringing their kids to the movies except this asshole over here. I'm that asshole.
What did you think about AMC originally saying, "Oh no, we're not going to require face masks," and then everyone got their torches and pitchforks, and I'm like, okay, face masks.
Considering I'm not a face mask person, I have a hard enough time breathing as it is. I'm not putting on a goddamn face mask. I asked my wife this today. I said, you hear all these stories about people being shamed, people being confronted. And I was like, do I just walk into a room and people take one look at me and they go, nah. Because no one ever confronts me about things. I never get shamed. I just walk through the world like a white man in the world, a man about town. And no one ever says shit to me. Like, unless I actively do something upsetting to someone, which has happened on occasion. I cut somebody in line, didn't realize I was cutting them, and he copped an attitude. But he wasn't overly confrontational either. but other than that mistake, which that's on me, like nobody just randomly confronts me about stuff like this. So like I went out today and, you know, I took my kid around. I went to the dentist. Not a word said about not wearing a face mask. And I don't wear one, not because I like, oh, well, you know, that's, I don't wear one because I have a hard enough time breathing and moving around in my condition. And that only makes it worse. So people hearing this going, well, get them. I don't know what to tell you. All I know is I'm in a room full of people. No one said a goddamn thing to me today. And that's because my wife's contention was, people think just look at you and go, never mind. It ain't worth it. This guy looks like he carries a gun.
Haha. I do wear a mask when I go out, but I've been trying to minimize how much time I spend outside. For the record, I do not wear a mask when I'm just outside walking the dog. If I put the mask on when I go inside other buildings. If I'm going to the grocery store, I'll put on the mask. If I'm picking up food, I'll put on the mask.
When I took my son to the parkour gym today, yes, white people, there is a parkour gym here in the Tampa Bay area.
Son to be a ninja.
That's right. Going back to the cashless thing, yeah, like they just don't accept cash anymore. Everything is done through like the little iPad thing that you can pay with. Everything, everything is done through Square. Everything is done through, you know, your phone when you can pay with your credit card on your phone, that sort of thing. You know, the virtual reader. So, all right. Anything other plugs you want to do before we get out of here?
Well, like I said, other than Cape Comic-Con, which fingers crossed is still a go in less than 3 weeks, we do not know when our next appearance is going to be after that. Partly because a lot of the conventions, like I said, are still playing it by ear whether or not they're going to be open, and partly because my assistant quit last year, so I have to actually manually go through my schedule, and I am too right-brained to exist. But of course, you can always find us on our online stores at Etsy and Handmade at Amazon. We have our social media with Facebook, Instagram, and Under Duress Twitter. We will be providing constant updates on our schedule, when and where we will be appearing, and when and what has been rescheduled. We just uploaded a bunch of new products online, including our new Magic the Gathering ribbon chokers and our game controller buttons hair barrette. When I say it out loud, they sound a little bizarre, but I swear to God, these are actually cool items. Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic.
All right. Well, I want to thank Alexis Hejna from Honeysuckle Rose Creations for joining me for another Source Material Live. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with Batwoman and Many Arms of Death. Be well, be safe, and behave.